Today I'm in the cemetery in Minehead. Minehead is in the north coast of Somerset, where the land reaches the sea in the Bristol Channel. We've got a lot of wind today. I do hope it's not going to spoil the enjoyment on the sound. In the older part of the cemetery, I noticed that the stone used does tend to go dark with the ages from dirt and atmospheric, and makes some of the inscriptions very difficult to read. This one mentions Edward Rule of Greenerley in Minehead, 1852 to 1922. But you can see the way the stone has become stained. This one with the Celtic style cross on top. If we pan down, again we can see the inscription. This one is readable, and it's John Body, 1920, age 75 years. A few of the stones use this lighter material, almost a smooth marble-like stone, and they've survived a lot better. This one is Sarah Clapp, 1923, age 75. Then Robert Clapp, and at the bottom we've got Ethel Louisa Clapp. Next to it is a very tall cross, one of the tallest in the cemetery. It's got an ominous tilt towards us and a very simple inscription partway down the main part of the memorial, and that reads William Gundry Mills, 1881 to 1921. On this plot here is a large anchor in stone. Behind it we have the inscription, My devoted husband, Private Charles Sainsbury Bagley, K.O.R.E, Regiment, King's Own, I don't know the rest of that. Died of wounds received in action, 1917, aged 28. There is a name on the anchor also, B.W. Bagley, at rest, 1910. A small grave with a small statue on it of a little angel or cherub, so clearly a child's grave. And if we drop down to the base, Audrey Jean Slade, 1930 to 1934, just 4 years old. Coming up to 90 years ago. This one to Thomas Charles Slade, Petty Officer, Royal Navy. He died in 1917 from injuries caused by the explosion of a mine whilst serving on HMS Sturgeon. He was 37. And beneath that we have Roy Thomas, beloved child of Alex and Emily Allen, a nephew of the above, who died in 1917 also, at 1 year 10 months. We've got a cross here, and the inscription on the base, Colonel Henry Moore, late 4th King's Own Regiment, died 1926, aged 83. And then underneath it is Geraldine, or his wife, and her dates. This one to Charlotte Jane, the wife of George Watts. That's 1920, 21 possibly, aged 49. And then George, who died many, many years later, 1949, aged 82. It's interesting to see the styles of memorials are different in different graveyards. This one very much is all about having crosses on the grave. Just a multitude of them everywhere. And there are, as always, the CWGC war graves, pilot officer, CD Chant, MSc, Observer, Royal Air Force, 1942, age 26. A little further along, Warrant Officer, RSM, Regimental Sergeant Major, I suspect, S. Milligan, the Essex Regiment, 1941. One of the other characteristics I notice in this cemetery is the use of curbstones to mark the boundaries of the plot. You can understand why people want to do that, but I've noted that cemeteries without curbstones, just the headstones, are much easier to maintain and always look a lot tidier and a lot nicer. After a few years, these curbstones become broken and uneven and don't add to the picture at all. A different sort of stone used on this one, and a distinctive typeface. Ada Miriam Hosegood, 1882 to 1938. She discharged life's duties with cheerful diligence and met afflictions with exemplary fortitude. I don't quite understand the different sized typeface as they've gone along there. They've used it on the bottom a little bit as well. Her children arise up and call her blessed, her husband also, and he praiseth her. Anyway, it's nice to see a distinctive memorial standing out from the rest. This one is close to the tree on my left. Very solid cross. I give you the inscription on the front face here. This is Helen Evelyn, the wife of Major General Sir Harvey Frederick Mercer, an only child of General Sir Charles Edward Nairn. There's a story to be told on this one. We've got Matthew H. Helens, who died in November 1943, age 65. Then if we look at the foot of the curbstone, we get his son there, Henry. He died in a prisoner of war camp just a couple of months before his father. And you wonder whether the father even knew that his son had been killed in a prisoner of war camp or died in a prisoner of war camp. Sometimes these messages took a long time to come home, or perhaps the death of his son hastened his own departure, but just 2 months apart. I hope you can make out the details on this one. In memory of our darling boys, Willie and Ronald Webber, who were drowned June the 29th, 1919, aged 9 and 5 years. Now that will be on the coast here with the Bristol Channel. There is a huge tide on the Bristol Channel, leads to what's known as the Seven Bore further up, and the currents are very strong when the water comes in. So I I think we can guess the background to this rather sad story. Just 9 and 5 years old when they died. This one's tilting forward, but it's had the stone cleaned and the lettering redone recently, so it makes it easy for us to read. Alice Gertrude, wife of Colour Sergeant E. Ball, Somerset Light Infantry, who died at Alcombe, 1913, aged 35, and their daughter Winifred, who was 5 months and died in India, and then their son Wilfred. So we've got Winifred and Wilfred, and he died at Minehead, aged 4 months. In the background you can hear the caretaker cutting back some of the grass. Please excuse the noise. This is a war grave to H. Kane, an ordinary seaman in the Royal Navy. He died on the HMS Iron Duke, 1917, aged 19. And this one to Amos William Cornish, another able seaman, HMS Vivid, 1918, aged 30. I see a lot for HMS Vivid, and I think I'm right in saying it was a training ship. But anyway, that's Amos William Cornish. We're quite close to the caretaker doing the strimming at the moment, so I hope you can hear this. This stone is the first one ever erected, or the person was the first person buried in this cemetery. James Baker, 1907, age 71, the first to be buried in this cemetery. I've moved down into the lower part of the cemetery, the newer section, away from the work that's being done on the grass. We'll have a look at some of these newer graves. This is the Garden of Remembrance, and they've elected to give everybody the same size stone to keep it neat and tidy, and obviously you choose your own inscription to go on it. I'll just pick a couple out for you to see. This one to Ray Nash, who was awarded the MBE 1994, followed by his wife, who came 9 years later. This to Michael John Hall, and then presumably his wife, Brenda Florence Hall. And even where there's standardised memorials, there's always somebody to try and push the boundaries slightly. This stone is slightly bigger, has a bigger piece in front, slightly different design from that adjoining it. Kathleen Thomas, called home 1991, Donald Thomas 2015. Just over there are the new graves, and we'll have a look and see if there's anything that stands out particularly amongst those. This is a much cared for grave with all the ornaments and the flowers and flags and cards around the base. On the stone we have a picture of a car. Can't make out what the model is, although it appears to be a Ford badge, the oval Ford badge on the front grille. Luke Allen Beaver, aged 28 years. There's one here with the football supporters shirt and badge. Matthew Jason Taylor, a loving son, brother and grandson. Finally you can rest in peace. And then Stephen Taylor. And then for those of you who don't recognise the colours, this is one you don't see very often on gravestones. It's Huddersfield Town. Another stone with fresh flowers, clearly looked after and the person remembered. And for Heather Margaret Bowditch, On the left hand side we have a tennis racket. Clearly her love in life. And another one with a colourful display of flowers in front of it. And this is Darren Charles Meacham, and he has a picture of a man playing hockey. I've reached the far end of the graveyard, up where the modern graves are, and I'm looking back up the hill to where I started my tour, and on top there and just down the other side of the hill are the older graves. We have a drum kit in loving memory of a dear father, son and brother, Trevor Jeffs, aged 50. And right next door to that is Paddy Pops Jesson, took his final bow. And at the top of the stone we've got a magician's wand, gloves and hat. Or perhaps not a magician's, perhaps just a showman's. And his loving wife, May Irish Jesson, went somewhere over the rainbow in 2008. This one stands with the list of names from the Sisters of Charity of St. Louis, Minehead. And you can see the names running down there from Jean-Marie Martin right the way down to Mary Barnard Dunn at the bottom. And a little distance away is another stone to the same Sisters of Charity, and we have another list of names on here, and they look predominantly to have French origins. Well, that's my visit to the cemetery in Minehead. Very pleasant spot. Very nice part of the coast here as well if you have time to come up to North Somerset. Thoroughly recommend it. Anyway, that's my bit on Minehead. So till the next time.